214 and 215, which I think is accurate. But I think council passed a motion that those grants would increase by 5% in the next 3 years. So I don't see that reflected in our draft budget. So I guess I'm asking Min to check on that, please.
I can double check. It was my understanding that they were increased in there based upon the per capita rate from
You'll check that.
libraries. I can double check. There's no other questions. I will move on to parks. Of course, as you know, Parks looks after and maintains all our open spaces. Includes everything from athletic fields to public utility lots. One of the biggest challenges Parks has had is that as the city grows, every new subdivision has public open spaces in it, and it falls to Parks Department to look after those public open spaces. Also, two little tidbits of information is that this year alone, from January to about the end of September, of course, Parks Department provides free doggy bagged dispensers throughout the parks. We have actually gone through 300,000 doggy bags in this last while, which is, probably a good thing for our community because that waste is most likely ending up into our garbage system. Speaking of garbage or litter, the Parks Department also tries to maintain and clean the litter from our open spaces. And in that same time period, from spring to fall, year to date, they've already picked up over 310 tons of litter from our open spaces. So it just gives you a scope. It's not all just about mowing grass and maintaining trees. They do provide some other services as well. Of course, the biggest challenge the Parks Department has is the weather. It never seems to, it's either too hot or too wet. It's kind of like farming in some respects. Built into the operating budget of Parks is development of the Integrated Pest Management Master Plan, and that was phased in over the 4-year budget cycle, as well as the turf management plan, which both were approved by council, and both have been phased in over the 4 years. It's not all being done in the first year. Parks has actually did a very good job of looking at it, how we can extend this over the period of time. You'll see the staffing requests that are on the screen. The Integrated Pest Management Technician is the person related to that plan. This is a worker that deals with those with pest management issues. We also recognize that this is predominantly a summertime position, but Parks is also proposing to use this person in the wintertime to also enhance trail clearing, because that's another factor that they want to have is more staff or more time spent trail clearing. The other remaining positions are conversions. These are positions that are existing right now. These are split, or actually I should say the next 3 positions are. These are split between Parks and Transportation, where staff work with Parks in the summertime and Transportation in the winter, predominantly helping with transportation with snow removal. And so again, that's already a very efficient use of staff. These positions have been in place for many years, and it is proposed to convert them to full-time established positions, because again, we don't see these positions, this work, ever going away. The last position under Parks Operations is listed there as a Parks Planning Technician. Again, with the volume of growth, our Parks Planning staff, which is really one full-time established position and one temporary position, look after the process of when new development or new subdivisions are created. They work with our planning and development folks as well as engineering, make sure that those new parks meet city standards. They also inspect them and spend a considerable amount of time making sure that they are that the parks that we receive from development and developers are at a standard that's acceptable for us to maintain in the future. as well as they also carry out other projects pertaining to um, park-related growth and expansion. So, for example, the latest project that they worked on was the Muscatay extension of trails and so on. And so it's not anticipated that that work will decrease in any point in the future. And so we're proposing just again to convert from a temporary position to a full-time established. The other thing that's factored into this budget is also a full-time new maintenance worker for Muskasippi Park. In the last couple of years, we've restructured things a little bit in Muskasippi Park, but we still only have 2 full-time established maintenance workers. We do have some seasonal and temporary staff as well, but that's 2 full-time workers that look after all the trails and all the issues pertaining to Muskasippi corridor. So they do everything from clearing trails to emptying litter to some general maintenance throughout that particular corridor. And they're really challenged to be able to keep up to their work, especially with anticipating that that corridor is also growing with the establishment or the creation of Muscatay Park and future growth to the north. We could also see where the plan is that there was no can't see any reduction in the amount of work that needs to happen in terms of maintenance. So in overall operating costs, again, parks is one of these ones that has numerous line items within your budget binders. I've broken it down in terms of the slides, in terms of 2 areas, both parks operations and Muskasippi Park. In your budget books, though, it would parks operations consists of everything from turf mowing, parks administration, turf mowing general, all the way down to weed and pest control. And so this is an overall summary of those operations. Basically, the increase in costs here are to predominantly in temporary needs around just basically keeping up with demand. The turf management plan and integrated pest management plan, like I said, is built in here as a phased-in approach over the 4 years. The next piece on this slide is also the Muskasippi Park pieces, and those show up in your budget books from basically from Muskasippi Park Administration to special events, urban park. And summarizing those all together is what you see on the slide. Again, those are reflect the 1 position plus just general potential increases in cost.
See Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Gary, when we talk about parks, we have summer employment, temporary, stay from May till September, whatever. Can you give me an idea how many staff that we would regularly use or hire temporarily, and what the cost would be for that particular line item?
I can give you the numbers in terms of numbers of people. Cost would take a little bit to calculate out.
We don't need it right now, but I'd like to maybe flag that for, or at least I would like to request that information later on.
Sure. Just again, specifically what information, Councillor O'Toole?
Just the numbers of staff and the costs generated from the summer employment staff.
So from summer, like the number of staff dedicated to summer operations in parks and the cost of summer operations?
Temporary staff.
Okay. Seasonal, okay.
I can, Councillor O'Toole, answer and provide you the information that it's about 80 to 85 staff that come on board in the summertime. That's everything from all our crews, from everything the staff who plant flowers and pick litter, all the way over to the staff that looks after our mowing operations. But at the actual cost of those, I would have to get for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Gary, I'm looking at Muskasippi Park Administration. So you had a position on your slide in terms of adding staffing. Is that covered in Muskasippi Park Administration?
I believe so.
215 to 216.
So.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And what about further to that? What about also Gary in terms of operating costs for Muskasippi Park Pavilion? There's an increase of about 60,000 there, and from 214 to 215.
I would have to pull up the detail a lot more to be able to provide that for you. Explain it. I know there is some increase in building, just building costs in general for all our facilities, but if you really want, I can give you more detail.
That's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. Okay. Thanks very much. Keep going. Councillor, Dr. Roth.
So the next area we've broken out separately, so you can see the costs particular pertaining to this. We've created a budget for the South Bear Creek ball diamond, or South Bear Creek Park, not just including ball diamonds, but it also would include any maintenance at Wee Links and the entire South Bear Creek Park area. Just the caveat I have on this is that revenues are very
Yeah, Mr. Roth, is there in our green binder? Do we have a tab for this?
I'm not sure. I know it is it's under recreation and parks, and it's just a line item called South Bear Creek. It's code is 7105. If that helps me.
Sure. Is anybody else on the admin?
Yes, sports and recreation.
So just to be very clear about this is that the revenue is based upon the revenue information that we've received from the organizations that are currently operating down there. So that may change going forward, and we will know once as we get into it a little bit more exactly what the revenue projections are. Our guess is that this is a little on the conservative side in terms of revenue. The actual staffing model that we were looking at down there are all temporary staff because it's a very much a seasonal operation. We would see a maintenance crew of 4 people, so 2 people during the day and 2 people in the afternoon, to look at doing general maintenance, infield maintenance, litter pickup, and other related tasks, predominantly in and around the ball diamonds. And we also would see a mowing crew of 4 people operating throughout an 8-hour shift to look after mowing and trimming. And that's kind of the best guess scenario that we would look at in terms of maintenance on that park. We also have anticipated a seasonal staff person for scheduling to assist with scheduling of the ball diamonds. There would be a considerable amount of work to look after that, and that's factored into these numbers as well.
I see questions, and if I can, Council, I just wanted to start on that scheduling. Director Roth, when you see that as a seasonal position, when would you see that seasonal position starting? And the reason that I ask is, has administration accounted for the fact that booking for seasonal events starts well before the season?
Yes, absolutely. We would see that starting much before the ball season starts. I don't have an exact date, but we would anticipate that starting fairly early into before ball season is actually going.
Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I want to flag the revenue. I think it's very, very weak of numbers brought forward, and I'm going to flag that.
Okay. So Councillor McLean's flagging the revenue on the South Bear Creek Park. Councillor Tarrant?
Mayor Given. Gary, I just want to get this straight. So there's going to be 4 seasonal positions for the maintenance and 4 seasonal for the mowing.
That's correct.
How does that compare with the association's current model over the last couple of years?
The association uses 1 to 2 staff for mowing and volunteers for maintenance and other support. And that's the challenge is that it's just trying to quantify how much volunteer effort goes into the particular park.
And also to clarify, so these 8 positions would be solely just for South Bear Creek?
That is correct.
Okay. I'd like to flag this item. The 8 positions.
So South Bear expenses and positions, I guess. Is that right? Staffing?
Staffing.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Clayton?
I just had a question for Director Roth. Since you've moved sections, are you done under parks? Because I had a question back in parks. Like we're now into sanitation and like South Bear Creek fit into a different tab? So are you done in parks before?
And my apologies, I didn't realize that it was in a different tab.
No, that's okay.
I was looking at it as related to
Okay,
parks, so
then
I can answer your
I'm sure
parks
it'll come up.
question.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm just finishing, so if you have
Okay.
a parks related question,
I
I'd
do.
be happy to try to answer
Can
that.
you, can we talk about a little bit more detail about sanitation and festive lights?
And just, council members, just for everybody, all of us that are following along, maybe when you're on a page and
Sure.
you're referencing it, just give us the page number. It'll make it easier.
105.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. 105.
I just would like a little bit more explanation before I decide if I'm going to flag this or not in regards, and maybe I missed it in the discussion, so I apologize, but in regards to the increase in salaries for the sanitation and festive lights, as well as the increase of goods, is this relating to a project that council has funded, or what's the increase in regards to the goods as well as the salaries?
It's my understanding that, so this particular crew looks after a couple of things. They put up the seasonal lights, of course, and this is the crews that look after picking up garbage and emptying garbage receptacles. It's my understanding that it's just projecting increased in costs related to goods and services. It's not an increase in the program itself.
Have we bought more?
Just mostly more garbage receptacles that they now empty, as well as the volumes of garbage that they are facing. So having to empty them more often as well.
So there's not a staff increase, it's just increase in salaries.
Well, there would be some staffing increases, but these are temporary seasonal staffing.
Okay, and it's not necessarily an increase in festive lights. You think it's an increase in sanitation goods?
Predominantly, as I understand it, is increase in sanitation.
Is it normal to loop sanitation and festive lights together? It's kind of a weird combination to me.
It is a weird combination. It is something that we've had lumped together for quite some time. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Radburn.
Thank you for giving, Gary. Can you identify, I'm looking at page 107, turf mowing general, and I'm looking at page 109, weed and pest control, both salaries over the 3-4 years. Can you identify the positions in your position chart that align to these increases in these two areas, turf mowing and weed and pest control?
So in my position chart, specifically, I'll roll back to that slide. This slide was looking at permanent positions. Doesn't it talk about temporary positions? So the IPM technician would be into the integrated pest management chart. That's the first one that was on this slide. The other 1, 2, 3 crew people, parks laborers, and those are the split positions, are actually integrated into both of these areas. As well as there are also temporary staffing that's looked at in these in order to try to achieve the turf management plan that are rolled into there. Those are the summer seasonal type of positions where we would need staff to operate various pieces of equipment.
So what I heard was in those two areas, some of the increase are those other positions.
That's right.
Some is some flexibility for temporary.
That's correct.
Councillor Tarrant.
Just want to go back to those South Bear Creek positions. Just if I could get some more information on sort of the rationale for that number. I guess my concern is it just seems really high for the area, and I just can't see having 4 full-time mowers, take care of that area. So if I could, when we come back to it, just have some justification for those, that'd be great.
And that's really I can try to get you more detail. It is really based upon our staff taking a look at it and estimating the number of hours it would take to maintain that space. And it's not just the ball diamonds; it also includes Wee Links, includes the campground, it includes the overall South Bear Creek footprint.
Councillor Clayton.
Sorry, back to the sanitation and festive lights on page 105. Would it be possible for you to get me more of a breakdown, just because it is such a weird grouping on that?
I can try. Yes.
Okay. Director Roth's taking notes.
Taking
Furiously to
notes.
keep- Okay. Okay. Director Roth, what's the next area you're going on to?
The next area we're going to talk about is recreation and sport. So, recreation and sport, with the exception of the anomaly of Creek that didn't follow my slides, typically includes the neighborhood associations, recreation and sport programming. It also includes the Coca-Cola Center and the Dave Barr Community Center. So I know in your books, unfortunately, those do fall within a couple of different areas, because I know that recreation and sport actually falls under the community living area, and then some of the facilities fall within the recreation and parks area. To talk a little bit about these particular ones, of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with neighborhood associations. We've had significant growth in the neighborhood associations within the city. Recreation and sport programming looks after not only providing some recreation programs for our community, but they also liaise with a lot of sport-related organizations. They manage sport pursuit of excellence, sport tourism-related issues, scores agreement, and the recreation master plan. They also look after programming within the two community gyms in terms of adult programming, and also look after overall bookings of school gyms for community use. Coca-Cola Center, of course, you're well familiar with that one. That's the Twin Ice Arena that provides not only arena, but also meeting rooms, meeting space, and concessions. And the Dave Barr Arena offers an arena ice surface, as well as a fully accredited daycare and preschool program. And included in that is also the Family Day Home support, our Family Day Home program, as well as we've shifted responsibility around for the Maude Clifford School after-school program to also be fit into Dave Barr, because it makes sense that all our child care type of operations as a city all fit together, looking at efficiencies in terms of licensing and those kinds of things. And of course, Dave Barr also has a concession area.
See Councillor McLean.
Thanks, Mary. Just a quick question on Dave Barr, Gary. The Kids Place Instructor 1 and 2, did they have any relationship with, they wanted to do a field house there? Did that have any relationship with that?
No, and I can talk to these ones specifically in a moment.
Okay.
So the staffing increases are actually on the slide that's can be on the screen. That's on the next slide. I can talk about the Dave Barr ones first, actually. Excuse me. The custodial worker is just that. It's a conversion of a part-time custodial worker. Of course, in their structure, this does increase that person's hours by 0.25 hours. This person primarily cleans the kids' place area, and they're currently a temporary staff. Again, a work that we don't see ever going away. The two kids' place instructors are temporary staff that were positions that was part of the daycare operating model that were created when that went through committee and council back when we started daycare a few years ago. Those positions were created as temporary staff, specifically to meet licensing requirements that we have in terms of operating the daycare. Again, we don't anticipate that those positions would go away, and there is revenue that offsets all our daycare and preschool expenditures. The other increase or change in positions on this particular slide, or in this particular area, is relating to the neighborhood association coordinator. As I'm sure you know, it was a temporary staff person that was doing this on a part-time basis. With the growth in neighborhood associations, we don't anticipate that the need for this work will ever go away. And we also see it increasing to full-time hours. And we know that this aligns with council strategic plans in terms of enhancing our neighborhoods.
See Council.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Gary, and speaking to that, is that what is in the increase column on recreation and sports development to $96,494? Is that the neighborhood association position conversion?
It likely is a big part of that, yeah.
Okay. Just have a question for. It seems the salaries are steeply inclining all the way up to 2018. Is there? Could I get a little more detail as to why, please?
That might be detail that I have to bring back. There isn't any other anticipated changes in positions in this particular area. So if I could take a look at it, analyze it, and get you back to you with more information, I can do that.
Sounds good. I'd like to flag the salaries portion of sport and recreation development, if I could, please.
See Councillor Clayton.
Thank you. The one item's been flagged, so I won't ask my questions now. But in regards to Dave Bar Arena salaries, although it's a decrease, I'd like to flag it because I would like to have a bit more discussion on that. Thanks.
Sorry, which decrease, Councillor Clayton?
On page 83, Dave Bar Arena salaries.
So
I mean, I guess we can talk about it now. If I have my question. It's whatever you prefer.
question gets answered, then we don't have to talk about
Okay.
it later. So
So you said you're really my 83 is Dave Bar Arena. Is it
we're all in the green binder.
Oh, green. You mentioned that a custodial change of 0.75, so 0.25 in a custodial change. I'm assuming that a custodial decrease isn't at 0.25 isn't $25,000.
No, I don't think it would be. So I would need to find out more detail on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna flag the salaries in the Dave Bar Arena line item.
Yep.
Okay, Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, McGibbon. A general question, I guess this would apply to both Day Bar and the Coca-Cola Center, maybe even Revolution Place. Can you just in general talk about the impact of the opening of the Sportsplex, County Sportsplex, on our revenues?
Oh, your microphone's on.
Sorry, Helen. Yeah, can you just speak generally to, have we seen a significant decrease or impacts to our revenue in our ice surface facilities following the opening of the Sportsplex, or has the, is there enough capacity in terms of user needs for those surfaces?
So in relationship to each of those facilities, we actually have seen our revenue from ice usage decrease by about $100,000 per year in each of those particular facilities. In the budget, they have actually made up or are anticipating making up for that in other areas. So, for example, Coca-Cola Center has very strong revenue in terms of advertising, and they do make up an amount of that. Dave Bar also makes up for that in other sources, such as in their kids' child programming. But there is certainly much availability in terms of ice time. There's still ice available. In fact, there's understanding that there's still in certain times of the week and certain times of the day, there's actually prime time ice, what we call prime time, and being in that early evening hours that's available.
That's helpful, thank you.
Councillor Rice.
Is that because we aren't competitive price-wise with some other alternatives?
Our pricing, as I understand it, compared to our neighbor, is actually, we're actually just slightly lower than our neighbor, or we were the last time we checked, compared to the county sportsplex. We were slightly lower than their rates.
So do we know why it's down? Have we done any sort of analysis as to why it's down?
The county sportsplex also has a fair bit of available ice time too, and that there is, our analysis is that there is more ice available than there is demand at this point in time.
So, I mean, Mr. Roth, fair to say that people that would have been prior to the county sportsplex, teams that would have, because of lack of availability of ice time, would have been required to play at sort of later hours or less preferable hours have left our facility and gone and bought the hours at prime times in the other facility. So it's just not enough to force people into those off hours where we still have costs, though.
And it is just, I mean, staff are always looking for opportunities to sell that available ice. It's not that staff aren't working at trying to sell it. They certainly are. And they've actually have in the past looked at little creative opportunities to enhance, for example, shinny hockey on a drop-in basis if there's available ice. And I know that Dave Barr in particular has been doing that whenever they can to try to fill up the ice and bring in some extra revenue.
Councillor McLean?
Mayor, given just a quick question to Gary. You say there's more ice available, but it depends what category you might be talking about. Between a certain age of youth to maybe shinny hockey with adults. I think there's a little difference there. Am I right in that? Like for some of the youth, I'm hearing that there isn't as much ice available. Certain times, the time frames. I need to wonder about
Councillor
that.
Roth, there's only so many ice pads.
Yes.
And there's only so many hours per day. There's only so many after supper hours.
But
That's the thing.
Yeah,
So-
and
so
I'm just
we
trying to
absolutely-
categorize that as youth and adults because
So we absolutely, as we saw in our demographics, there's no question that we have a growing youth demographic in the region, and probably every parent wants their kids to play at a reasonable hour rather than at 10 o'clock. So yes, absolutely, but we can't create more 5:30 till 8 hours
yes.
unless we create more pads of ice.
That's very correct.
Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Sorry, guys, I just want to bounce back to Eastling Center on page 73. From 2014 to 2015, Gary, there's a doubling, 84% change in the amount of funds going into services for the Eastling Center. Sorry, I should have asked earlier, but I was just curious as to why it doubles.
Mr. Roth?
Trying to find the information here as well.
73 in the green binder.
Again, as I had already indicated, in essence, we will be bringing back completion of the operational review, almost a revised budget. I do know that particularly, I'm not sure if it falls under the goods or services area, but I know that our utilities are substantial at the Eastlink Center. It's about $1.5 million a year just to pay for our utilities at that particular location. So I'd have to pull out the detail to be able to figure out as to those costs.
Okay, thank you.
But I think when it comes to the Eastlink Center, that's part of that operational review is that we will keep it within the net bottom line of $4 million. And when we bring back the consultant's report, we'll also bring back a revised budget essentially that will reflect where we're going to save on costs to make up for any lost revenue opportunities.
Go ahead, Gary. Where are we going to next?
The last one within recreation and sport is just the overall recreation programming budget. Again, this includes the neighborhood association coordinator, and I think council may have already somewhat looked at it. Also includes community group funding to a number of groups that were referred by council committee of the whole. It was built into this budget as well.
See Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor. Given I had a question regarding neighborhood development employee. I apologize, I don't recall what you were calling the employee. However, I would assume, and maybe I'm absolutely wrong, but over time, as more neighborhood associations are developed, that this job would go away, but and that the neighborhoods would sort of run independently. But you're explaining that it's going to increase continually. Is there a full saturation point, or is this something we're just going to keep to fund? And
Well, one of the things that we are experiencing is that neighborhood associations need ongoing assistance. We're continually finding that they need ongoing help with various things. The model was intended to be there more as a support for them and that they could operate themselves. But knowing that these are all volunteer organizations, it does take a considerable amount of staff help and assistance in some cases to keep them going. And it was our anticipation that these wouldn't be going away, that as neighborhood associations continue to grow and build, that having a resource person for them to go to certainly is valuable. This person not only is their go-to person in terms of the structure of the neighborhood association, in terms of making sure their bylaws are in place and they have people elected and doing the positions and so on, but it's also assisting the neighborhood associations with granting opportunities and funding, and in some cases even working with them to resolve internal conflicts to make sure that the association's healthy and able to carry on.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Rice?
I guess maybe I'll speak to this if we flag it the neighborhood association coordinator. I guess I don't know why we care if their bylaws are in place and they're having regular elections and all that. If we're not putting any money into it, isn't it up to them how they run?
Actually, Councillor Rice, city policy is that we do put money into them on an annual basis once they become incorporated and they get their not-for-profit status. So once they've achieved a neighborhood association status, we actually do put money into them on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Roth?
So if we can move on, the next service area I want to talk a little bit about is transit. And transit is pretty straightforward. It's our operations of our buses and moving people from A to B. One of the interesting things that we've noticed is that our ridership in 2014 is up a fair bit, 21% increase in ridership. It's the first time over the course of transit operations that we've actually seen a fairly good increase in ridership. And there's about a 8% increase in corresponding revenue for that in total dollars. Some of the other ongoing successes, I guess, have been just in using technology and our linkage now to Google Transit, which is also works on an app off of a phone, and then for Google Map users, it actually displays our transit routes and gives you directions as to when the next bus should be showing up and how to get from point A to point B. In terms of staffing requests, administration has put forward 3 half-time positions. These are basically to keep up with demand in terms of extra drivers. We know that all our high school routes are more than saturated. Our buses are packed to capacity on those routes, but they're only certain times of the day. It's only a few hours in the morning, it's a few hours in the afternoon. And so what we're proposing is to hire part-time additional person for each of those routes. Like I said, those buses are packed to capacity and standing room only, and so that we're just trying to keep up with demand. The second one is an increase in hours only. We have a half-time customer service admin assistant, and this person not only looks after administration but also handles all public calls. I know with the Citizen Contact Center, some of those calls will be dealt with at that point. But when it comes to callers looking for specific routing information and specific inquiries of transit, there will still be a lot of calls that are transferred over to the transit department itself.
Councillor Rice?
Do we have enough buses? I mean, you hire these people part-time, they have to have a bus to drive.
Mr. Roth?
So we do have some spares within our current existing fleet, and that is what would be anticipated is that we would use those spares within our existing fleet. I'll talk a little bit about community mobility plan options in a couple of slides, because I know as capital plan we also improved purchase of more buses in terms of the community mobility plan using green trip funds, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Councillor Radburn?
Thank you, McGibbon. I'm looking on page 130, Gary. So my question was relative to, if we look at 14 and 15, significant differences in salaries, I think because of the incorporation of the fleet of staff versus in services before that was the contract number. I'm assuming that's fair. It's about a $450,000 difference.
That's correct.
So can I assume that 450 is the cost of moving staff into to become city staff, and the positions you just identified? That would be the makeup of those swings.
That is correct. Our fleet costs have also gone up in terms of, there's a $800,000 increase you'll see in interdepartmental. A big chunk of that is actually our fleet costs. The way our transit buses were managed in the past is we worked through a reserve, and we set money aside into reserve, and we buy buses from a reserve, and we pay our fuel costs separately. That's different than how all other city equipment is managed. All other city equipment is managed through by the fleet department through kind of a ongoing, almost like a lease rate, where the departments pay the fleet department a rate that's set for that piece of equipment that includes all maintenance, all fuel, and replacement costs. And so in the transition from the old model to the new model, we've also over time have drained a lot of that reserve down, and this is trying to actualize the true costs of providing those buses on the road. The remaining costs are related to the staffing model change, absolutely.
Thanks, Mr. Roth.
So the slide that I have on the screen now does show the overall transit, the transit numbers. Moving on to an option that was not funded in the budget, but I wanted to give council some information on, is we priced out what it would cost us to meet everything within the community mobility plan in terms of transit. Transit was probably one of the bigger areas talked about in the community mobility plan. And so we actually priced it out, and this would be annual costs if tomorrow we decided we were going to do everything in the community mobility plan. Community mobility plan would call for 4 more additional routes and also increase in the frequency of buses. So I mean, right now there are buses that run at half-hour and hour frequencies depending on the time of the day. It would actually increase it to more frequent times. This is there for your information. We know that we are going through a transit master plan review, and so after the completion of that transit master plan review, we would be able to have better information to council exactly what 4 routes and where we would look at implementing those kinds of changes. I know that there was capital dollars budgeted for more buses to potentially go towards this plan. However, those are contingent upon green trip funding, and knowing that green trip is not guaranteed, one suggestion could be is that we look at funding enhancements to the community mobility plan in the future, and if we don't receive the full green trip funding that we're applying for, we would look at the city's contribution to that, as well as the city's contribution to green trip funding that we apply for as part of our ongoing process with replacement buses, part of our fleet maintenance, and looking at pooling that to make sure we have enough dollars to actually be able to maintain and replace our existing fleet instead of expanding.
Okay. So I see a couple in the queue, but I just want to ask you a question. So Gary, you're suggesting with regard to the buses that council funded in the capital discussion, right now administration is not recommending the operational side of that, like no new bus drivers, until we know whether or not we get the capital grants that would enable us to actually go ahead with the bus purchases.
That's correct.
And can you refresh my memory of when we had those new buses coming on? Like, do we have some time to plan for that? Will there be a budget review in between now and when we had sort of envisioned those capital? I don't remember whether they started in 15 or 16.
Those capital items were spread out over the 4 years of the cycle, so
Okay.
they were spread out over the time.
But we don't, we don't imagine a situation where we would receive a bus in January of this year and not have a driver for it.
No, I don't imagine. We will bring that information back to council as quickly as we can. Our first goal with Green Trip is also to look at some existing replacements that we have. I mean, we have some aging buses that do need to be replaced and upgraded.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tarrant?
Gary, just in regards to that, the chart, just bring that up again. How much of the capital that we've approved is included in that capital amount there? Sorry, I should say, if Green Trip funding were to be, we were to get the Green Trip funding, would that be all covered off that capital there?
If you combine Green Trip and the city's contribution, it would cover off that capital.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, so to build on that in my previous question, so that expense operating is the part that is sort of to be determined based on our success on the capital side.
That is correct.
So that's kind of the total potential cost that council may be required to decide upon.
That's correct.
15 or 1.5 million.
That's correct.
Councilor Rice.
On that chart, you can add 4 routes, and the net increase in operating costs is less than $135,000. That doesn't appear to make sense to me.
Can we have the chart up again, please?
I believe the project revenue also includes some Green Trip operating, Green Trip funds. I think that's the correct way to read that chart.
So the revenue is actually
Revenue includes
capital.
capital expenditures. The operating is our true operating cost, and then the capital is our capital expense. Sorry for not making it clear.
So project revenue is capital grants, Councilor Rice, not operational
Oh,
profit.
okay. Very confusing chart.
My apologies for not being clear on that one. And that actually concludes community living, unless there's any other further questions.
Any questions? Any further questions for Director Roth? I don't see anybody logging in. I see that it is 11:51, so it's probably good timing to draw to a close for the morning. We will take our lunch break, and we'll be back back in our seats and turn on the cameras at 10 after 1. Does that work for everybody? So we've got a little over an hour to get our lunch and get back in our seats. So 10 after.